The war had been going on for so long that nobody could remember what started it. Commander Vexka stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, enemy ships were waiting. They were always waiting. His ship was called the Starblade. It was fast and strong, with weapons that could destroy a small moon. But even with all that power, Vexka felt tired. He had been fighting this war for 30 years. His father had fought it before him. His grandfather, too. Everyone in his family had been soldiers. The enemy was called the Centauri Hegemony. They had different ships and different weapons, but they were just as strong as Vexka's people. Every time one side won a battle, the other side came back stronger. It never ended. Vexka's people were called the Zephyrian Republic. They believed in freedom and democracy. At least that's what they told themselves. The truth was, most of them had never known anything but war. Their whole society was built around fighting. On the enemy side, Admiral Nexthor felt the same way. She stood on her own bridge, looking at the same stars. Her ship was called the Iron Fist. It was bigger and heavier than Vexka's ship, with thick armor and powerful guns, but she was just as tired as he was. Nexthor's people believed they were fighting for order and stability. They said the Republic was full of rebels and troublemakers who needed to be controlled. But deep down she wondered if anyone remembered why they were fighting anymore. The two fleets met in space above a dead planet. This planet had once been green and beautiful, with cities full of people. Now it was just rocks and dust. The war had killed everything on it years ago. Vexka looked at his tactical display. 20 Republic ships faced 25 hegemony ships. The numbers were close, as they always were. Neither side ever had a big advantage. "All ships, prepare for battle," he said into his communicator. His voice was calm and professional. He had given this order thousands of times before. On the other side, Nexthor gave the same command to her fleet. Her reptilian features showed no emotion. She had learned long ago not to feel anything during battle. Feelings made you weak. Leitao. Battle began like all the others. Ships moved in careful patterns, firing energy beams and missiles at each other. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Some ships were destroyed. Others were damaged but kept fighting. Vexka watched as one of his cruisers exploded in a ball of fire. 50 good soldiers died in that moment. He had known some of them personally, but he couldn't think about that now. In war, people died. That was just how it was. Nexthor saw 3 of her own ships get destroyed by Republic fighters. More good people gone. She had given medals to some of those pilots just last month. But mourning would have to wait. The battle was still going, and after 6 hours of fighting, both sides pulled back. The Republic had lost 7 ships. The hegemony had lost 9. In the old days, people would have called this a Republic victory, but nobody celebrated anymore. They all knew the hegemony would be back with more ships next week. Vexka sat in his command chair and rubbed his forearms. He was getting old, for a soldier. Most commanders retired by his age. But there was no retirement in this war. There was only fighting until you died, or became too weak to fight. His communication officer approached him. "Sir, we're getting reports from the other battle zones. The enemy attacked our mining station in the Kepler system. We destroyed their supply depot in the Wolf sector. Same as always." Vexka nodded. The war was like a giant machine that never stopped running. Every day, somewhere in the galaxy, Republic and hegemony forces were fighting. Planets changed hands, fleets clashed, people died, but nothing really changed. Nexthor was having similar thoughts on her flagship. She looked at the casualty reports with sad eyes. So many young soldiers had died today. For what? She couldn't even remember what they were trying to achieve anymore. "Admiral," her aide said quietly, "the families of the dead are asking for permission to hold memorial services." "Granted," Nexthor replied, "but keep them short. We need to prepare for the next engagement." There was always a next engagement. The war never paused for grief or rest. It just kept going, like a river that had been flowing for so long that everyone forgot there had ever been dry land. Both commanders knew that tomorrow would bring more battles, more death, more destruction. But neither could imagine any other way to live. The war had shaped their entire civilization. It defined who they were. In schools across both empires, children learned military tactics instead of art. Scientists worked on better weapons instead of medicine. Engineers built warships instead of homes. Everything served the war machine. Some people tried to remember what life had been like before the fighting started. Old books spoke of trade and exploration, of art and music, of families living in peace. But those seemed like fairy tales now. The war was reality. Young soldiers on both sides sometimes asked their commanders why they were fighting. The answers were always the same. To protect our way of life, to defend freedom, to maintain order. But these were just words. The real reason was simpler and sadder. They fought because they had always fought. They fought because stopping seemed impossible. They fought because war was all they knew how to do. Neither Vexka nor Next Thor could imagine that change was coming. Neither could picture a day when their fleets might not face each other in battle. The idea that someone from outside their conflict might have different ideas never crossed their minds. The war dragged on because that's what wars did. At least, that's what everyone believed. Soon, they would learn that some wars could end in ways nobody expected. The human ship New Horizons came out of hyperspace like a child stumbling into a room full of angry adults. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, looking at readings that made no sense. His ship was small compared to the massive warships surrounding them, but it was fast and well built. "Captain, I'm reading weapons fire everywhere," said Dr. Lisa Chang from her science station. She was young and excited about exploring space, but right now she looked worried. "These energy signatures are huge. Someone's been fighting a major battle here." Morrison had been exploring space for 5 years. He had seen empty planets and dead stars, but never signs of other intelligent life. Now he found himself in the middle of what looked like a war zone. "Sir, we have contacts," Lieutenant Ben Carter called out from communications. "Two groups of ships approaching from different directions. They don't look friendly." On the main screen, Morrison could see sleek ships coming from the left. They were beautiful in a deadly way, like silver knives cutting through space. From the right came darker ships, big and heavy-looking, built more like hammers than knives. Morrison felt his heart racing. This was it. First contact with alien life. But instead of peaceful exploration, he had walked into someone else's fight. "Open a channel to both groups," he ordered. "All frequencies." The reply came back in 2 different voices, speaking languages his computer had never heard before. But somehow, the ship's translation system was already working on them. "Unknown vessel, you have entered a war zone," came a musical voice from the sleek ships. "Leave immediately or you will be destroyed." "Alien craft, this is contested space," said a harsher voice from the heavy ships. "Depart now or face the consequences." Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was small but experienced. They had handled dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. He took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. "Both fleets, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel New Horizons. We come in peace. We are explorers from Earth, and we wish to make contact with you." There was silence for a long moment. Then both voices came back, sounding confused. "Human," said the musical voice. "We have no record of this species." "Earth," said the harsh voice. "This planet is unknown to us." Morrison realized he was dealing with 2 different alien species who were at war with each other, and neither of them had ever heard of humans before. "We would like to meet with representatives from both of your civilizations," Morrison said, carefully. "Perhaps we can help find a peaceful solution to your conflict." What happened next surprised everyone. After some discussion between the fleets, both sides agreed to send representatives to the human ship. It seemed that curiosity about these strange new aliens was stronger than their hatred for each other. An hour later, Morrison found himself in his ship's small meeting room with 2 very different aliens. From the sleek ships came Commander Vex Ka, who looked like a tall, thin person with 4 arms and skin that changed colors when he was emotional. From the heavy ships came Admiral Next Thor, who looked more like a large lizard that walked upright and wore military uniforms. Dr. Chang sat beside Morrison, taking notes and trying to understand the alien languages. Ben Carter monitored communications, making sure both fleets stayed peaceful while their leaders talked. "This is remarkable," Vexka said, his translator making his musical language sound like accented English. "A completely unknown species with faster-than-light travel. Where did you come from?" Morrison activated a holographic display showing Earth's location. "We come from a small planet in what you probably call the local group. We've been exploring space for about 50 years, but this is our first contact with other intelligent life." Nexthor leaned forward, her reptilian eyes studying the humans carefully. "You said you wished to help with our conflict. Why would aliens involve themselves in our affairs?" "Because war is wasteful," Morrison replied honestly. "We've had many wars on our world. We know how much they cost in lives and resources. If there's a way to make peace, shouldn't we try?" Both aliens made sounds that might have been laughter, but not happy laughter. "Peace," Vexka said sadly. "We have been fighting the hegemony for over 300 years. There can be no peace while they oppress free peoples. The Republic has caused chaos throughout the galaxy." Nexthor replied coldly. "Order must be maintained. They cannot be allowed to spread their rebellion." Dr. Chang looked up from her notes. 300 years? You've been at war for 3 centuries? 347 standard years, both aliens said at the same time, then glared at each other. Morrison felt dizzy. Earth's longest war had lasted only 30 years, and that had nearly destroyed 2 countries. He couldn't imagine fighting for over 3 centuries. "What started this war?" he asked. The question seemed to confuse both aliens. They looked at each other, then at Morrison, then back at each other. "The usual causes," Vexka said finally. "Territory, resources, ideology. But what specific event began the fighting?" Dr. Chang pressed. Another long pause. Nexthor's scales changed color slightly. "There was a dispute over mining rights in the Kepler system, but that was a very long time ago." Morrison stared at them. "You've been fighting for 3.5 centuries over mining rights to a system that no longer exists?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Both aliens seemed to realize how strange their situation sounded when explained to outsiders. "The original cause is not important," Vexka said quickly. "The hegemony has committed many crimes since then. The Republic's actions have forced us to respond," Nexthor added. "We cannot allow their extremism to spread." Morrison exchanged glances with his crew. He was beginning to understand that this war had taken on a life of its own. Neither side was fighting for the original reasons anymore. They were fighting because they had always been fighting. "Have you ever tried to make peace?" he asked. "Many times," both aliens replied together, then looked annoyed at their agreement. "What happened?" "They made impossible demands," Nexthor said. "They refused to accept responsibility," Vexka countered. Morrison was starting to see the pattern. Both sides blamed the other for the failure of peace talks. Both sides had reasons why they couldn't stop fighting, but neither side seemed to remember what victory would actually look like. "How many people have died in this war?" Dr. Chang asked quietly. The number they gave her was so large that Morrison had trouble understanding it. Billions of lives lost over the centuries. Entire planets turned into battlefields. Generations of children who had never known peace. "And what do you hope to achieve by continuing to fight?" Morrison asked. Both aliens started to answer, then stopped. They looked at each other with something that might have been confusion or embarrassment. "Victory," Vexka said finally. But he didn't sound convinced. "Peace through strength," Nexthor added, but her voice was equally uncertain. Morrison realized that these 2 species had been locked in conflict for so long that they had forgotten what they were really fighting for. The war had become its own reason for existing. As the meeting ended and both aliens returned to their ships, Morrison sat quietly in his captain's chair. Humanity had stumbled into something much bigger and more complicated than simple exploration. But maybe, just maybe, Fresh eyes could see solutions that the combatants had missed. 3 weeks after first contact, a special meeting was held on Haven Station, a neutral space station that neither side controlled. Captain Morrison had called for help from Earth, and now he had a team of experts with him. Colonel Amy Foster was Earth's best military strategist. She had studied every war in human history and knew how conflicts started and ended. Dr. Peter Kim was a specialist in helping people solve their problems without fighting. Together, they hoped to understand why this alien war had lasted so long. The meeting room was bigger this time, with representatives from both the Republic and the Hegemony. Commander Vex Ka sat on one side with 5 other Republic officers. Admiral Nexthor sat across from them with her own team of Hegemony leaders. The humans sat in the middle, trying to make sense of what they had learned. Dr. Kim looked at his notes and spoke carefully. "We have spent 3 weeks studying your conflict. We have read your histories, examined your battle reports, and interviewed your soldiers. We think we understand why this war has continued for so long." Both alien groups leaned forward, interested despite themselves. "The original dispute was about mining rights in the Kepler system," Dr. Kim continued. "But that system was destroyed in the war over 200 years ago. So what are you fighting about now?" Vexka's forearms moved restlessly. "The Hegemony has committed terrible crimes. They have enslaved entire worlds and crushed freedom wherever they find it. The Republic spreads chaos and rebellion," Nexthor replied, her scales darkening with anger. "They destroy the order that keeps civilizations safe." Colonel Foster had been studying both sides' military records. She stood up and activated a holographic display, showing battle patterns from the last 50 years. "Your military tactics are interesting," she said. "Neither side ever tries to win decisively. You fight limited engagements designed to maintain balance, not end the war." "That is not true," protested a Republic general. "We seek total victory over the oppressive Hegemony." "Then why," Foster asked calmly, "have you never attempted a direct attack on the Hegemony homeworlds?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. The Republic officers looked uncomfortable and exchanged glances with each other. "Such an attack would cause massive civilian casualties," Vexka said finally. "We are not monsters." Foster nodded and turned to the Hegemony side. "And why have you never tried to conquer the Republic's core systems?" Nexthor's reptilian features showed similar discomfort. "The risk of escalation would be too great. Total war would destroy both civilizations." Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "So both sides avoid actions that might actually end the war because you're afraid of the consequences." "We fight honorably," Vexka insisted. "Unlike the Hegemony, we do not target civilians or destroy entire planets." "Neither do we," Nexthor snapped back. "We follow the same rules of engagement that the Republic does." Dr. Kim made more notes. "You both follow the same military codes. You both avoid civilian targets. You both refuse to escalate to total warfare. In fact, you have more in common with each other than either side wants to admit." The aliens looked shocked at this suggestion. A Hegemony colonel stood up angrily. "We have nothing in common with Republican terrorists. We would never cooperate with Hegemony oppressors," added a Republic admiral. Colonel Foster smiled grimly. "Your military units work together better than most allies we've observed. Your communication systems are compatible. Your tactical doctrines complement each other perfectly. You've been fighting the same enemy for so long that you've become almost identical." Morrison pulled up economic data on his tablet. "We've also analyzed your civilization's economies. Both sides spend exactly 60% of your resources on military needs. Both sides have the same percentage of population in military service. Both sides produce the same types of weapons and ships." "This is coincidence," Vexka said, but he didn't sound convinced. "No," Dr. Kim replied. "This is adaptation. You've shaped your entire societies around fighting each other. Your economies, your governments, your cultures, everything is designed to support this war." Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the room. "We think we know why peace negotiations have failed 17 times. It's not because you can't agree on terms. It's because peace would require both sides to completely change how they live. The room was very quiet. Even the ventilation system seemed to whisper. Your civilizations have been at war for so long that you don't know how to be anything else, Morrison continued. Your leaders are all military officers. Your industries all serve the war effort. Your children are raised to be soldiers. Peace would mean starting over completely. A young Republic officer spoke up hesitantly. Are you saying we should just surrender our principles? What principles? Dr. Kim asked gently. Can you tell us exactly what the Republic stands for, besides fighting the hegemony? The officer opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. He looked confused and upset. Colonel Foster addressed the hegemony side. What does your civilization want to achieve other than defeating the Republic? The same confusion appeared on the alien faces. They had been defined by their enemy for so long that they had forgotten their own identity. Morrison felt sorry for both sides. They were trapped in a cycle that none of them had chosen, but all of them maintained. You're not really fighting each other anymore, he said quietly. You're fighting change. You're fighting the fear of what comes after the war ends. Next, Thor's scales had turned a pale color that Morrison had learned meant sadness or fear. If we are not at war, then what are we? That's what you need to figure out, Dr. Kim replied. Both of your civilizations have spent centuries preparing for battle, but you've forgotten how to prepare for peace. Vexka looked around the room at his fellow officers, then at the hegemony representatives. How can we trust them after so many years of fighting? How can we work with people who have been our enemies since before we were born? Asked a hegemony general. Morrison smiled sadly. The same way humans learned to work together after our wars ended, by remembering that your enemy today might be your ally tomorrow, if you're both willing to try something new. Colonel Foster brought up another display showing population statistics. Both of your civilizations are aging. Your birth rates are declining. Your young people are leaving for neutral worlds. The war is slowly killing both sides, even without major battles. If you continue this conflict for another 100 years, there won't be a republic or hegemony left to fight, Dr. Kim added. The war will outlive the civilizations that started it. The truth of this statement was clear in the data. Both sides were slowly bleeding people and resources. The war was consuming its own foundation. Morrison looked around the room at the assembled aliens. You have a choice. You can find a way to end this conflict and build something new together, or you can continue fighting until there's nothing left to fight for. But how? Vexka asked desperately. How do we stop something that has been going on for centuries? Morrison exchanged glances with his team. They had an idea, but it was so radical that even they weren't sure it would work. We have a proposal, he said carefully, but you're not going to like it. The human proposal was so shocking that both alien groups thought they had misunderstood the translation. Captain Morrison stood before hundreds of military leaders and politicians from both the Republic and hegemony. His small team of humans looked tiny compared to the massive assembly of aliens. You want us to do what? Admiral Nexthor asked, her scales turning bright red with shock. Fight one final battle, Colonel Foster repeated slowly and clearly. Both sides bring everything they have. Winner takes all. Loser surrenders completely. The meeting hall erupted in angry sounds. Clicks, hisses, roars, and mechanical translations filled the air as both sides reacted in horror. Commander Vexka waved all four arms frantically. This is madness, he shouted. You are asking us to commit genocide. Not genocide, Dr. Kim said calmly, waiting for the noise to die down. Integration. The winning side takes responsibility for the losing civilization. Everyone becomes equal citizens with the same rights. Impossible, came voices from both sides. Our species cannot work together. Morrison raised his hand for quiet. You have been fighting each other for 300 years. Your militaries cooperate better than most allies we have seen. Your languages can be translated between each other. Your technologies work well together. A hegemony politician stood up, her reptilian face showing disgust. The cultural differences alone make this impossible. We could never live alongside Republican extremists. And we could never accept hegemony tyranny, added a Republic general. Dr. Kim activated his data pad and projected information into the air. Our anthropologists have studied both your cultures for 3 weeks. You have more similarities than differences. Your values, your social structures, even your art and music, they are more alike than either side wants to admit. This is propaganda, Vexka protested, but his voice was uncertain. Colonel Foster brought up military diagrams showing fleet positions and battle plans. The plan is simple. Both sides commit every ship, every soldier, every resource to one massive engagement. No reserves hiding anywhere. No backup plans. Everything goes into this one battle. Suicide, whispered Nexthor. Victory, Morrison. Corrected. For the first time in centuries, one side will actually win completely. No stalemate. No endless continuation. Final victory or final defeat. A young Republic officer raised his hand nervously. What if we refuse to participate? Then you continue your pointless war for another 3 centuries, while the rest of the galaxy moves forward without you. Foster said bluntly. We have contacted 6 other spacefaring civilizations since arriving here. They are all interested in trade and cooperation, but none of them want to deal with species locked in eternal warfare. This threat hit both sides harder than any weapon. Could have. Morrison could see the fear in their eyes. For civilizations that had defined themselves through conflict, being ignored by the galaxy was worse than being defeated. A hegemony admiral leaned forward. How would such a battle be organized? The logistics alone would be enormous. We will handle that, Dr. Kim announced. Humanity will provide neutral oversight, monitoring, and post-battle integration assistance. We will make sure both sides follow the rules and that the winner treats the loser fairly. Morrison walked to the center of the room where both sides could see him clearly. You have 72 hours to make your decision. Commit everything to one final battle, or face centuries more of meaningless fighting while the galaxy leaves you behind. The debate that followed was the most intense either civilization had seen in decades. Military commanders argued with politicians. Hawks demanded total war, while doves begged for any alternative. But gradually a strange consensus began to emerge. On the Republic side, old generals who had fought their entire lives began to see the logic. At least this way, the war ends, said one veteran. Win or lose, our children might finally know peace. Young officers were excited by the possibility of decisive action. No more limited engagements, said a Republic captain. No more fighting just to fight. We can actually try to win. The hegemony went through similar discussions. Admiral Nexthor found herself agreeing with subordinates she had never listened to before. The war has consumed everything, admitted her chief of staff. Maybe it is time to risk everything to end it. Scientists and engineers from both sides were secretly thrilled. For centuries, they had been forced to design weapons instead of exploring the universe. The possibility of peace meant they could finally work on projects that built instead of destroyed. But the politicians were terrified. On both sides, entire governments had been built around managing the war effort. Peace would mean massive changes in how both civilizations operated. Morrison met privately with leaders from both sides during the debate period. He tried to answer their concerns and fears about what would happen after the battle. What if the hegemony wins? Asked Vexka during a secret meeting. How can we trust them to treat Republic citizens fairly? The same way they trust you, Morrison replied. Both sides will be monitored by neutral observers. Any violations of the integration agreement will result in human intervention. Similar conversations happened with hegemony leaders. What if we lose? Nexthor asked. What guarantees do we have? The same guarantees the Republic has, Dr. Kim answered. Equal treatment, equal rights, equal opportunities. The goal is not to destroy the losing side, but to merge both civilizations into something stronger. Colonel Foster spent her time working out the military details with officers from both fleets. The scale of the proposed battle was enormous. Every ship both sides possessed would participate. Every soldier would be involved. Nothing would be held back. The battle will take place in the Polaris system, she announced. It is neutral territory with no inhabited planets. Both fleets will approach from opposite sides and engage until one side surrenders or is destroyed. The rules were simple but absolute. No reinforcements during battle. No retreating to fight another day. No civilian targets of any kind. And most importantly, the losing side would surrender completely and immediately. As the 72-hour deadline approached, both civilizations held votes in their government assemblies. The debates were broadcast across both empires, and billions of citizens watched as their leaders made the most important decision in 3 centuries. The Republic voted first. After heated discussion, the measure passed by a narrow margin. They would commit their entire fleet to the final battle. The hegemony vote was even closer, but it also passed. They too would risk everything on one engagement. When Morrison received the news, he felt both excitement and terror. The plan could work brilliantly, ending centuries of warfare and creating a new, peaceful civilization. Or it could fail catastrophically, resulting in the mutual destruction of both species. Colonel Foster approached him as he stared out at the stars. Having second thoughts? Morrison nodded grimly. This could be the biggest mistake in human history. If both fleets destroy each other completely, then the galaxy gets peace anyway. Foster replied quietly. Sometimes the only way to end a war is to finish it completely. Dr. Kim joined them at the observation window. Both sides have spent the last 3 days preparing for the battle. For the first time in centuries, they have a clear goal. Win or lose, but end it. Morrison made one final announcement to the assembled alien representatives. The battle will take place in 30 days. Use that time to prepare your fleets and your civilizations. In 1 month, this war will be over forever. As the aliens dispersed, to ready their forces, Morrison wondered if humanity had just helped end a conflict or started the biggest disaster in galactic history. Soon, they would find out which. The Battle of Polaris began at dawn on a Tuesday and lasted 18 hours. Captain Morrison watched from the bridge of the human command ship as the 2 largest fleets in galactic history faced each other across empty space. On one side, 800 Republic ships formed perfect battle lines. Their silver hulls gleamed in the light of the Polaris star. Fast cruisers, heavy battleships, and swarms of fighters all moved together like a deadly dance. On the other side, 800 hegemony vessels arranged themselves for war. Their dark angular ships looked like predators waiting to strike. They had fewer fast ships but more heavy armor and bigger guns. Morrison felt his heart pounding as he watched both fleets prepare. This was it. After 3 centuries of endless war, everything would be decided in the next few hours. Both fleets report ready, Lieutenant Ben Carter announced from his communications station. All ships have confirmed they understand the rules of engagement. Dr. Lisa Chang monitored the sensor readings from her science station. I'm tracking every ship in both fleets. No one is holding anything back. They really did bring everything. Colonel Foster stood beside Morrison, watching the tactical displays. In all of human history, we've never seen a battle this large. 800 ships on each side. This will make or break both civilizations. The battle began slowly, with long-range fire between the massive formations. Bright energy beams and streams of missiles crossed the darkness as both sides tested each other's defenses. For the first hour, it looked like any other engagement from the long war. But gradually, something different began to happen. Both sides were fighting with a desperation that had been missing for decades. This was not another limited engagement to maintain balance. This was a fight to the finish. Commander Vex Ka stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching hegemony ships explode in brilliant flashes of light. His fleet was doing well, but the cost was terrible. Ships he had served on, friends he had known for years, all disappearing in moments of fire and destruction. Sir, we've lost the cruisers Starwing and Nova Strike, his tactical officer reported, but we've taken out 5 enemy battleships. Vex Ka nodded grimly. In the old days, losses like that would have meant retreat and regrouping. Today, there was nowhere to retreat to. This battle would continue until one side could not fight anymore. On the hegemony flagship, Admiral Nex Thor watched her fleet being slowly ground down by Republic firepower. The enemy ships were faster and more maneuverable, picking apart her formations with precision strikes. "Admiral, we've lost 60 ships," her aide reported. "The enemy has lost 43. Nexthor's scales had turned a dark blue color that meant grim determination. "Continue the attack. We knew this would be costly." As the hours passed, both fleets hammered each other with everything they had. Brilliant explosions lit up the Polaris system as ship after ship died in the darkness. The space around the battle became filled with debris and the frozen bodies of soldiers. Morrison watched the casualty reports with growing horror. Thousands of beings were dying every hour, but neither side showed any sign of backing down. For the first time in centuries, both civilizations were truly fighting to win. By the 10th hour, the battle had become a grinding match of attrition. The Republic's superior technology was winning, but slowly and at terrible cost. Sleek cruisers dueled with heavy battleships while fighters swarmed through the wreckage of destroyed vessels. Dr. Kim monitored communications between the fleets. Neither side is asking for quarter or suggesting retreat. They're both committed to seeing this through to the end. Colonel Foster studied the tactical situation. The Republic has about 400 ships left. The hegemony has maybe 300. If this continues, the Republic will win, but barely. As the battle entered its final phase, Admiral Nexthor made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of fighting to the last ship, she opened a channel to the human observers. "This is Admiral Nexthor of the Centauri hegemony," she announced. Her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "I formally surrender my fleet and my civilization to Commander Vexka of the Zephyrian Republic." The words that ended 3 centuries of warfare were spoken without anger or bitterness. Nexthor's remaining ships stopped firing and powered down their weapons. The sudden silence was more shocking than the battle had been. On the Republic flagship, Vexka stared at his communications screen in amazement. He had won. After 300 years, his side had finally achieved total victory. But instead of feeling triumphant, he felt only sadness for all the lives lost. "Admiral Nexthor," he replied over the open channel, "I accept your surrender, with honor. The hegemony fought with courage and dignity. You and your people will be welcomed as full citizens of the new Galactic Republic." Morrison felt tears in his eyes as he watched former enemies begin rescue operations together. Republic ships moved to help damaged hegemony vessels, pulling survivors from the wreckage. The war was over, and the healing could begin. The integration process took 2 years and was harder than anyone expected. Former enemies had to learn to live and work together. Republican hegemony officers served on the same ships. Soldiers who had been shooting at each other became partners. Dr. Kim established schools to help both sides understand each other's cultures. Children from both civilizations learned together for the first time in centuries. Colonel Foster created a new military that combined the best ideas from both fleets. But the real work was emotional. Families from both sides had lost loved ones in the war. Cities had been destroyed. Entire generations had known nothing but conflict. Learning to forgive and move forward took time and patience. Morrison became the first human ambassador to the new Galactic Republic. He watched with pride as former enemies built a civilization stronger than either had been alone. Hegemony engineering. Skills combined with Republic scientific knowledge to create amazing new technologies. Within 5 years, the combined civilization had achieved things neither side could have done separately. They built hospitals instead of warships. They explored new worlds instead of destroying old ones. They created art and music instead of weapons and fortifications. Other alien civilizations watched in amazement as the galaxy's longest war transformed into its most successful peace. Diplomats from across the galaxy came to study how the integration had worked. The human method of conflict resolution became famous throughout known space. But Morrison never forgot the cost. Millions had died in that final battle and in the centuries of war before it. The peace they had achieved was built on an ocean of sacrifice and suffering. One day, while visiting a memorial to the war dead, Morrison met an old Republic veteran who had lost his son in the final battle. "Was it worth it?" the alien asked him. "All those deaths for peace?" Morrison thought carefully before answering. Your son died so that his children could live without war. Whether that was worth it is not for me to decide, but I hope his sacrifice meant something." The veteran nodded slowly. "It did. My grandson is studying to be a doctor, not a soldier. The war is over. Finally, truly over." As Morrison looked up at the stars, he thought about humanity's role in ending the conflict. They had not won through superior weapons or tactics. They had succeeded by helping others see what they had forgotten, that some fights could only be won by ending them, completely. The galaxy was at peace, and that was worth everything.